Prisons are built to break people, but in Pennsylvania, some prisons never stop breaking them even after their passing. Shadows creep across abandoned cell blocks, disembodied voices scream in the silence, and the countless visitors swear they felt the touch of something that should no longer exist. These are the haunted prisons in Pennsylvania that chill you to the bone. Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia. Now imagine standing in a long, cold corridor, the paint peeling from the walls, the silence so heavy it presses against your chest. Suddenly you hear footsteps echoing, but when you turn, no one's there. That's Eastern State Penitentiary, one of the most haunted prisons in the world. Built in 1829, this Gothic fortress pioneered the Pennsylvania system of total isolation. Prisoners were locked in tiny stone cells, forbidden to speak, forbidden to even see one another. The goal was penitence. Now, the result was madness. Now, visitors and guards reported hearing screams at night, even back in the 1800s. Inmates clawed at their walls, basically talked to themselves and collapsed into silence, and those who resisted met punishment straight out of a nightmare. The mad chair, where men were strapped so tightly their circulation stopped until they were left maimed. Now, the iron gag, where a bar clamped into the prisoner's mouth and was basically chained to their hands behind their back. Every time they moved, the gag tore at their lips and tongue. Others were thrown into something called the hole, which was an underground pit with no light, no food, and no air for days at a time. All of that anguish left scars in the stone. Paranormal investigators who visit Eastern State often capture strange orbs, glowing streaks of light, and even disembodied voices on tape. One guard swore he saw a shadow figure pacing inside a locked cell. Another visitor described being overcome by nausea, as though, the walls themselves were closing in. And then there's a story everyone knows. Al Capone, the most famous gangster of all time, was sentenced here in 1929. Unlike other inmates, Capone's was given a lavishly furnished cell with carpets, a desk, and even a radio. But even with his comforts, he was terrified. He would scream at night that James Clark, the man assassinated in the St. Valentine's Day mass assassination, he was in the room with him. That's what he claimed. Now, guards said he begged the ghost to leave him alone. Cell block 12 is still the most infamous. Guest reports laughing, echoing through the halls when no one's there. Cell block 6 is known for shadows darting from one doorway to another, and cell block 4 is where you'll hear footsteps that follow you, even though you're alone. Now, some say it's just the echo of a broken building. Others swear it's the echo of broken souls. Cambria County Jail in Ebensburg. Now, not all haunted prisons are huge Gothic castles. Some are small, tucked away in quiet towns, and that makes their stories even stranger. The Cambria County Jail in Ebensburg is one of those places. Built in 1872, this jail became infamous for executions. Now, 11 men were hung up on its gallows. Locals still whisper that these condemned never left. Visitors claim they hear the sound of sobs and dragging chains near the site of the hang-ups. Now, the most disturbing tale is about a prisoner known as Smitty. According to legend, Smitty was locked in his cell one night only to vanish by morning. The bars were intact, the locks unbroken, guards searched everywhere, but he was gone. Now, some believe he escaped, others say his spirit simply slipped out, leaving his body behind. To this day, the cell where Smitty was kept gives people an overwhelming sense of dread. Visitors describe flickering lights, sudden temperature drops, and the uneasy feeling of being watched. During paranormal tours, people have smelled cigarette smoke in empty corridors. Footsteps echo on staircases no one is climbing. The gallows area is especially active. Cold spots form suddenly, voices whisper in the dark, and some tourists have said they've even left in tears, claiming invisible hands push them. The jail's thick brick walls amplify every noise, making it hard to know what's real. But too many people have left shaken, convinced something beyond explanation is inside. Old Allegheny County Jail and Western Penitentiary in Pittsburgh. Now, Pittsburgh is home to not one but two prisons with chilling reputations, the Old Allegheny County Jail and the Western Penitentiary. The Old Allegheny Jail is a fortress-like building linked to the courthouse by the Bridge of Sighs. The most famous ghost story tied to this jail involves Mrs. Kate Soffel, the warden's wife. In 1902, she helped two convicted inmates escape after falling in love with them. The jailbreak ended violently. The brothers were hit by a firearm and Mrs. Soffel herself nearly unalived. People say her spirit lingers in the jail, wandering the corridors she once paced. Tour guides tell of hearing a woman's whisper, faint sobbing, or the sudden slam of cell doors when no one's actually near. Just across the city was Western Penitentiary, a prison that once held Confederate soldiers during the Civil War. Now, some claim those prisoners never left. Visitors report cold spots, muffled voices in the night, and shadowy figures dressed in outdated uniforms drifting through the halls. Paranormal groups have investigated and say they recorded faint cries and shouts and accents that don't sound modern. Even hardened locals admit these these places just feel different. You can tour many old buildings without a problem, but in Allegheny and Western Penitentiary, it feels like the past is waiting for you. State Correctional Institution in Rockview, this is in Benner Township. And if there's one thing more chilling than abandoned prisons, it's the prison still in use because the energy there is fresh. Rockview is one of them. Now, since 1915, this prison has been the site of executions in Pennsylvania. More than 300 men have been put to demise here, first in the electric chair and later by lethal injection. Now, the prison death house is where condemned inmates spent their final hours. Guards whisper about it, footsteps echoing down empty halls, lights flickering in the execution chamber. The sensation of being watched even when they're alone. Some refuse to do rounds near the house unless they're paired with another officer. Visitors on official tours say the air feels heavier in that building. Paranormal investigators who've managed to get permission describe recording unexplained sounds, knocks, cries, even static-like voices on electronic devices. Some claim this house carries the energy of every man who ever walked inside and just never walked out. Unlike other prisons, Rockview isn't frozen in time, it's still active. That means the terror is ongoing, and so of course are the whispers of ghosts. Holmesburg Prison in Philadelphia. Now, Holmesburg Prison is maybe the darkest story of them all. Built in 1896, it became infamous not just for riots and assassinations, but for something even more disturbing: experiments. Beginning in the 1950s, inmates were used as test subjects for pharmaceutical and chemical companies. Men were exposed to really toxic substances, radiation, and even biological agents. Many of them suffered burns, scarring, and lifelong illnesses. Prisoners describe being treated like lab rats, their skin painted with chemicals that left really horrible blisters. Some claim they were injected with substances they just never identified. Decades later, survivors said Holmesburg left them scarred in body and in their soul. With that much human suffering contained in one place, it's no surprise people call it cursed. Paranormal investigators report, hearing screams echoing through abandoned cell blocks, locals walking past at night saying they've seen shadowy figures in the windows, pacing back and forth. Some visitors describe sudden nausea and panic attacks inside even. The building itself adds to the dread. Very long hallways, crumbling walls, barred windows that look like staring eyes. And when you walk through Holmesburg, you don't just see history, you feel it pressing down on you, as if the walls themselves remember. Now, each of these prisons hold more than criminals. They hold pain, grief, and fear that, refuses to basically pass on. Eastern State shows us what silence can do to the human mind. Cambria County proves executions don't erase suffering. The old Allegheny jail and Western Penitentiary remind us that history still breathes in the dark. Rockview reveals the weight of passing itself, and Holmesburg carries scars of cruelty disguised as science. These aren't just ghost stories, they're reminders of how deep human suffering goes and how it lingers long after the gates close. So which one would you dare to enter? Would you walk the halls of Eastern State, sit in a cell where Al Capone begged a ghost for, or step into Holmesburg where human experiments still echo? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more terrifying dives into these places that history refuses to let go of. These haunted hotels in the United States are so scary you'll never want to check them out, and if you do, you may not be able to check out. The Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. Imagine checking into a hotel so haunted that it inspired one of the most terrifying horror novels ever written. That's the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, the real-life inspiration behind Stephen King's The Shining. One chilling story goes like this. Guests in room 217 have woken up to see a woman standing at the foot of their bed. She doesn't scream, she doesn't move, she simply stares. Her name is said to be Elizabeth Wilson, a housekeeper who nearly passed away in a gas explosion in that very room in 1911. Guests have reported their luggage mysteriously unpacked, lights flickering on their own, and even blankets being tucked tightly around them at night, like a ghostly maid still kind of tending to her duties. But that's not the only room that terrifies visitors. Room 401 is haunted by a ghost named Lord Dunraven, who originally owned the land before the Stanley was built. Guests have complained of being watched, hearing